Are we ultimately answerable to somebody for our lives? Part 3. Hello, my name is Aries and I am the host of Truth and Life Forum. On our last video, I discussed about the advantages of living our lives with the awareness that God will soon judge us for what we have done with the gift of life. That awareness will greatly affect our decisions and our effort, and that is to pursue for righteousness or not. However, I have never argued for the existence of God because that deserves a separate series of videos. My point was, on the one hand, the idea that God exists would provide us a good reason to live right. But on the other hand, the idea that no God exists would not provide us a solid foundation to live right. Well, of course, atheists can live virtuous lives, but they cannot draw it from atheism or lay it on the grounds of atheism. Well, as they say, atheism is not a system of beliefs. Therefore, they cannot draw anything out of atheism. If they try to live right, which they should, the reason for that must come from somewhere else, aside from atheism. So, if you don't believe that God exists, let me refer you to my 8-part series of short videos on Sigurado Ka sa Atheism? Or Are You Sure About Atheism? Which I delivered in English Filipino about 4 months ago in our YouTube channel. One of the points I made there is that if atheism is true, then we do not have any ultimate accountability to anybody. We define atheism as the belief that denies that God exists. So, if we assume that God does not exist, then there would be no ultimate judge for our lives, and therefore, there is no supreme authority above us to whom we must answer about what we have done with our lives. But if God exists and He is also the giver of this life that we have, and He sets the standards of righteousness, then we have to try to meet His expectations and prepare for the moment when we see Him and present to Him a record of what we have done with our lives. If there is an ultimate judgment, we can also expect some kind of reward or punishment. If there are no ultimate consequences, then it does not matter if we live our lives well or if we waste it. It would not be a waste after all when it has no value. But our nature tells us that our lives are valuable, especially to us. That's why we treasure it, we protect it, and keep it. It is only when people feel and think that it is worthless that they begin to think of giving up their lives. But the default and natural position is life is valuable. If God does not exist, then life is not a gift, but it is only an accident. Can you accept that? If God does not exist, then life is not a stewardship. We own our lives. Well, that's what we think, and no one else owns our lives. Therefore, we can do whatever we want with it, even when others try to control it or own our lives. If God does not exist, life has no real expectations, but only relative to one's opinion or of others. If God does not exist, then only our parents gave us our lives. But do they own our lives when we grow up as adults? Well, probably not. When we become independent of them, we are responsible for our lives. Now, you may say these are all true because God does not exist after all. But these make life senseless, without purpose, without goal, void of meaning, and can be lived without morals too. Well, just like animals. And so if we try to harm each other, it's not wrong after all. Can you accept that? Consider these, my friends. First, can we live a life with the belief that there is no God who will ultimately judge us by His righteous standards? Well, of course, you can do that. But what if God does exist and you fail to live and pass the standards that He has set? Now, it will definitely be a tragedy. Number 2, if we live a life with the belief that there is no one who will ultimately judge us, and eventually we find out that the ultimate judge does not exist after all, do we actually win? Not really. There is no reward for that. Third, if we live with the belief that there is an ultimate judge of our lives and we will soon have to give an account to Him, then we should live by His requirements. Then we will be rewarded. Otherwise, we will be censured or punished. Number 4, can we live with the belief that there is an ultimate judge for our lives and then we eventually find out that He does not exist after all? Did we waste our lives? Well, just like the answer to the second one, maybe not. We have not lost anything. So I encourage you, find out if God exists or not, then that will affect how you will live your life. I will be back on Friday for part 4 of this mini-series.